Hello everybody, welcome to Awesome Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and drop a like on this video. I'm trying to hit 100k subscribers on this channel by the end of the playoffs, so your subscription would be much appreciated. We're actually at the playoffs now that I'm saying that intro, so seriously, subscribe to this channel. We're about a little less than 15k away from that milestone, so your subscription, I already said, would be much appreciated, but I said it twice now because I appreciate it that much. Also drop a like, only takes 1 second and makes a massive difference. So the first two playoff games of this year's, playoffs were fantastic games. Or at the very least, the Timberwolves game was fantastic and the Jazz Mavericks game was relatively good as well. Just because it was a close game, not every close game is automatically interesting. So for that reason, this is one of the less fun but still close games. But either way, those were two close games to open it up, even though the Timberwolves ended up winning the game by like 13 points. It was like a 5-point game with a few minutes left at one point. So, close games there. Last two games of the day, which was the Raptors versus the Sixers and the Warriors versus the Nuggets, not so close. These were some blowout victories, a 20-point deficit in the Sixers game and a 16-point deficit in the Warriors game that was a 20-point deficit from like the midway point of the third quarter to pretty much garbage time where it became a 16-point game, but was primarily a blowout. So not going to have a ton to say in this video because there's not a lot fun to talk about in blowout games, but there is stuff worthy of note. Most of all, both of these are series that people anticipated the loser of both of these games at least put up a fight. Now, a lot of people, as much as I believe in the Raptors, I feel like there's been too many people being like, oh yeah, the Raptors have the Sixers. Like, I think it's possible, and I'm not saying it's not possible now that the series is over. In fact, I plan on doing a series preview video over on my main channel, so I obviously still don't believe this series is over by any means. You should never say that after one game to begin with, unless it was like a series you already didn't think like you already knew who was going to win before it started. But this was definitely a discouraging sign for the Raptors, and on the Nuggets side of things as well, a pretty discouraging sign, because outside of Nikola Jokic and like I think there's some other role player who stepped up and I can't remember, Will Barton, outside of those two, I saw nothing positive out there, really. I mean, I guess Bones Highland was fine. Honestly, should have played more than 17 minutes. But no one really put up a fight outside for Barton and Jokic, and it was pretty abysmal. So that's the first noteworthy thing, is that both of the losers of these games were expected to put up better fights than they did. I've seen a lot of people overreact and immediately act like these series are over because of this one game. As I mentioned, you shouldn't really say that after one game. Again, I remind people the Orlando Magic beat the Toronto Raptors in the first game of their first round matchup, and then it was a 5-game series by the end of it, and the Raptors won the championship. Anyways, I guess we'll talk about the Raptors game because it happened first. The first thing I want to talk about is some young players, Tyrese Maxey and Scotty Barnes. Scotty Barnes ended up going out with an injury because Joel Embiid stepped on his foot. Saw some people blaming Joel Embiid for this. If you ask me, Joel Embiid was not looking at him and had not looked at him before. So to blame him for stepping on his foot when he literally was not looking where he was stepping is ridiculous to me. Hell yeah. I just got a text from someone who I was anticipating a text from. Anyways, but Scotty Barnes almost had a triple-double on his rookie debut. 15, 10, and 8. And Tyrese Maxey, I didn't realize he scored this many points. I knew he was having a good game. But when someone on Twitter told me that he had 38, I was like, I thought he had like 25. Bro had almost a 40-piece in his debut for the playoffs. Another guy who stands out, Tobias Harris. He had 26 points, but I believe 20 of those was in the first half. It was something close to 20. Yeah, he had himself a fucking game and a half. And Joel Embiid and James Harden just kind of chilled in this one. James Harden did not shoot the ball well, but because everybody, but not really everybody, Tobias Harris and Tyrese Maxey primarily were making their shots, he was really just playmaking. He had 14 assists with 1 turnover. I realize a lot of us slander James Harden for the fact that he's become more of a playmaker than a shot creator, but 14 assists and 1 turnover is really impressive and it's really impactful. I wish James would still have a more aggressive mindset scoring the ball, which is really something I never thought I'd ever be saying about him. But regardless of that, in the playmaker role, absolutely fucking killed it today. And on Toronto's end of things, I'm actually surprised that Fred VanVleet's stats look this good because I thought they looked worse. Same goes for OG and Anunoby. I mean, I didn't think OG's stats were bad. I didn't think they were as good. Like, the box score suggests he had a better game than I got the impression of. But really, Pascal Siakam and, again, Scotty Barnes were the only players that stood out to me. Fred VanVleet and OG ended up having good box score games, I'd guess, but didn't feel like they were playing all that great to me. And the one player who stood out as really, really bad for Toronto is my favorite player on the team, unfortunately, and that is Gary Trent Jr. I am a huge Gary Trent Jr. fan. I was a big proponent of him ever since I saw him step up in the bubble with the Portland Trail Blazers. I've been hyping the guy up left and right, and he goes 2 for 11 from the field and 2 for 7 from 3. It would have been 2 for 8 from 3, except for on one of his misses, he got an offensive foul because he kicked his leg out. So that saved his field goal percentage, but gave him a turnover. So, you know, whichever one is better. He was already shooting 18% from the field, so didn't save a whole lot. But overall, it was, I will say this to defend Toronto. You're not getting a 20-point first half from Tobias Harris in the playoffs most of the time. You're probably not going to get a 38-piece from Tyrese Maxey most of the time. You might get like an average like 25 from him. You might get him to average that for a series. I'd say is within reason. He's not going to average 38. But at the same time, Joel Embiid didn't shoot the ball well, and him and James Harden kind of just chilled this game. I mean, they were both... well, I guess Harden took more shots than Tobias Harris, but Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris, and technically Joel Embiid took, okay, Tobias Harris just took 14 shots, but made basically all of them. But Embiid nor Harden were the main guys in shot attempts in this game, and they were not overwhelmingly going for shots. It really just felt like, hey, we don't even really have to force it, and it's working. So you could say, on one end, like, hey, you're not going to get the contributions from Maxey and Tobias at that level every game, but you could also say you're not going to get such a subdued version of James Harden and Joel Embiid every game. Granted, Joel Embiid has a history of playing poorly against Toronto, but also that was more so when they had Marc Gasol and they don't have him anymore. So, I don't know, there's more stuff that will go into the preview. Either way, don't think Toronto's out of this one yet, but Game 1 was not an encouraging sign. And really, that's what I have to say about the Nuggets-Warriors game as well. Steph came off of the bench from this one because he was injured, and he started off the game really, really shit. He was 0 for 5, and then he turned the corner and was pretty much fine from there. He ended up going 5 for 8 after that. But Jordan Poole, talking about young players having good games, Jordan Poole had himself a really good game. He had 30, and this is his third year in the NBA. Yeah, this is his third year in the NBA. Playoff debut. I can't imagine he got minutes when they were in the playoffs. Well, they weren't in the playoffs 2 years ago, and they lost in the bubble in the play-in. So yeah, this is his playoff debut for sure. But yeah, Jordan Poole was really the only guy that stood out. Draymond Green hit a really cool three-pointer, but other than that, you know, it was just standard Draymond Green stuff. Klay Thompson was cool-ish, but nothing really stood out particular in what the Warriors did offensively. And as I mentioned earlier in the intro, towards the start, the Denver Nuggets offensively, nothing outside of Jokic and Will Barton. And Jokic finishes this game with 6 assists. He should have finished with 15. Like, genuinely, so many open shots that he created that did not go in. It was honestly pathetic. Speaking of pathetic, Aaron Gordon got backdoored on a bunch of possessions, which, being that he's this team's best defensive player, that's not ideal. Also got shut down by Draymond Green one-on-one a lot. Aaron Gordon has a tendency to try to do too much, which is in part because his team kind of needs him, asks him to do more than he is capable of doing. And every time he tried to do too much versus Draymond Green, it did not work out. Austin Rivers needs to stop taking three-pointers that he is not good enough to take. He takes a lot of them where there's definitely a defender in the vicinity, and really he should only be taking wide open ones. Yeah, that's my main takeaway. JaMychal Green missed 2 shots in this game, and both of them stick out on my mind because they should have gone in. And that DeMarcus Cousins hit a three-pointer that was cool. I was happy to see that happen because his three doesn't really go in, and it was nice to see DeMarcus Cousins getting playoff minutes. But other than that, the Warriors just fucking smacked them for the most part. And like I said, it's a 16-point game, but it was a 20-point game for a majority of it. And the Warriors didn't do this by anything in particular. It was just kind of like their typical, as you recognize, Warriors dominance. Team basketball, depth, all of that. Fucking Juan Toscano-Anderson came off of the bench for garbage time in this one. Which, same for Jonathan Kuminga, which really says a lot about how deep this team is, because those are both rotation players on most teams in the playoffs. Not on this team. But yeah, 2 blowout games. I expect both of these teams to do better than what they did, but great start for the favorites in both of those series. And yeah, that is it. Goodbye.